and final segment of today's edition of the program Wake Up Sierra Leone. We've just been joined in the studios by the country's Minister of Information and Civic Education, Chernoba, who is here to give us an update on government activities, issues around, of course, the drug investigation, among many other things. And similarly, so on Zoom, we do have Dr. Emmanuel Sam, who is a lawyer, and he will be examining the diplomatic scenarios of yours and, of course, Adebayo's extradition law between Holland and that of Sierra Leone. Good morning, Mr. Minister. It's a pleasure having you as always.
Good morning. Always good to be with you.
Good morning, Sam. Are you there? Just so that we confirm. Good morning, Sam.
I guess he will be joining us soon.
Sure. So we start off with the minister who is already with us in the studios. Siva, just aid the public with an update as to what's happening generally, with governance and what have you.
We're in a very interesting, I think, period. We are looking at, for example, the changes in the international scene. I think Andrew was alluding to that. But in terms of what is happening internally in Sierra Leone, I think we have a very stable country. We just celebrated the Armed Forces Day. We saw His Excellency as the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces take the lead in those celebrations, really honoring the sacrifices and bravery of the gallant men and women who put their lives on the line so that we can go to sleep at night and sleep well. And I think we've continued to do that. The First Lady of the Republic of Sierra Leone, Madam Fatima Bio, was just elected the President of the African First Ladies Organization. It's a distinct honor for which I think as a country we must all be very, very pleased and very proud. We welcomed her back and gave her roses, because I think in that position, again, it's part of President Bio's continuation of elevating the image of our country internationally and placing us in positions of respect. I think we'll continue to see that. Across the country, we're seeing the functionality of, for example, our judiciary. We've seen that we just had an incredibly progressive set of appointments. His Excellency appointed a Chief Justice who is well respected, he's young, he's charismatic, he's dynamic. The desire is to inject a new sense of hope and life in that sector. The learned Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Alpha Cisse, well respected international lawyer, comes with, I think, a stellar set of credentials. And we've seen that the work that he's continued to do. The Chief Minister reported yesterday that on the question of Resolution 4 of the tripartite agreement, which relates to the release of political prisoners, the committee has come up with a set of recommendations, and as per the agreement, they have made the recommendations to the government, and the Chief Minister has made a public commitment, of course, on behalf of the government. As you know, he represents us as the lead negotiator in that process. This is a product of the excellent work that the AG has done, who's been leading on it even before he became AG, when he was deputy on Resolution 4. But all the parties are together. They have, meeting of the minds. There's been a consensus. And now the government is going to review those recommendations and we're going to take action. So whether you're looking at it from politically in terms of the peace and stability of our country, things are going very well. We're headed in the right direction. The economy continues to be stable. The dollar continues to be stable. We saw massive news announcement last week, and I hope that you all are connected. For the first time in the history of the country, this is something that they've worked on for years. We now have the national switch. The national switch ensures instant, prompt payment across multiple platforms. And by the way, by the time you get to April, the requirement will be every financial institution has to work through that single switch. And what that means is you can send money from Orange, AfriCell, from your bank immediately. You don't have to wait anymore for, bank transfer, it will take 3 days, it will take 4 days, we need to talk to each other, we need to engage. No. Instant switch, and we've seen this process work in countries like Ghana, Momo, I think is what it's called, or Kenya. It's the foundation that really transformed the Kenyan economy. and we're hoping it will do similar wonders for us in Sierra Leone. It helps relieve the burden of the poor for moving cash around. It will reduce theft. It will also just ensure that people can create their own credit history. You can have access to more resources. And this is, I think some people in the financial sector who have worked here for years say it is the singular most impactful thing that's happened in the financial sector in probably half a century. And that's huge. And that's a product of President Bio's vision for financial inclusion and for transforming this country. So there's a set of consistent, progressive things that have been done. The fish, I think that was, there was a hiatus placed on the fishing season, and people were asked a temporal for a month, and it was a product of hue and cry. But again, my foundation always is people are reasonable. Fishermen and women were reasonable. They were engaged, a very clear consultation process, and this is best practice. It happens around the world. It's good for the environment, it's good for the fishes. It allows them to also now regenerate, lay their eggs, and this is based on science. So we can allow that to happen, because otherwise, even those resources are at risk of being depleted. So so again, it just shows that there's a government that looks at what the evidence is, what the facts are, and we're systematically following that, and we're continuing to engage the public. Yeah.
Siba, amidst all of these laurels, some laurels which individuals have brought home, say particularly to the First Lady, which is of course very much commendable. But at the wake of this celebration, we heard from the First Gentleman who was very excited to celebrate, of course, the First Lady of this nation. But he did mention at some point in time that what he will do is to see ways to inspire ways of ensuring that Sierra Leone moves in the right direction, and the change that Sierra Leone needs at this moment is one he can't provide to Sierra Leone. Is it a misunderstanding of what the president meant?
In fact, you have just misrepresented what he said. That's not what he said. I was there. I actually spoke before he spoke. And he said this multiple times.
Help the public understand.
I was there when he spoke at the MCC, when we won the MCC, and he said what he's excited by. Look, the context is clear. We have the youngest cabinet in the history of this country. We have the most inclusive government in the history of this country. It's not subject to debate. It's fact. I just mentioned two major appointments. The Chief Justice is the youngest Chief Justice in the history of this country. The Attorney General is the youngest Attorney General in the history of this country. Minister of Information sits in here, the youngest Minister of Information in the history of this country. If you look across the board, this is a president who said he wants to be a human capital development president. What does that mean? He wants to invest in the young and pass the torch forward into the next generation. What he said on that day was clear when he was speaking about that. Because of the requirements of our democracy, he will wish to be there for 20 years and take on a national project in a kind of way that maybe the Kagamis of this world, who were not limited by the trappings of power. But what he was saying clearly was, while he cannot stay to see the job finished until the finish end, he takes comfort in the fact that he's investing and inspiring young people who will take the torch forward, because change is a continuum. Change is not done by one person, and he's a Democrat. He believes in that. Because otherwise he will say, other leaders have said, only me, only I can do it, and therefore let's change the constitution. This is the first president I think we've had in a long, long time in this country who has not entertained any conversation about more time after you. In fact, the criticism of him is that the man is already saying, I'm planning my exit. This is a fine democratic leader. If you look at the trend in the world, leaders are seeking to extend their mandates. You see the confusion in our sub-region all across us. President Bio is being clear from day one. Other presidents, who I will not name, even tested the waters. They had their boys doing after the partner, the work, the partner. He has not done that. But he's saying the continuation of the vision of the transformation is invested in the inspiration of young people. He has brought young people, not just those of us in governance, But his investment in young people by investing in education, by spending 22%, highest per capita investments in Africa in education. This is a man who understands that you need to inspire young people to dream. And by the way, he was even responding to something I said, because I said, his example is one that shines for all young people, the way he treats his wife. The first president, the first public leader in our lifetimes who has treated his partner as an equal, publicly, with platforms, showered her with public affection and love in our culture. You know, it was considered like a weakness for a man to show love. This president has broken that taboo, inspired and given her platforms. And he was saying, because I know I cannot, from day one until the end, I cannot oversee the change completely, I am investing in inspiring young people who will continue the journey. It's simple, but this is politics, and we live in an era of fake news and distortions and misinformation. The facts will remain.
You know, I'd also want to know what the reality on ground is, because oftentimes it's beautiful on paper, our statistics, our data is always beautiful on paper, but what's the reality on ground?
On what specifically?
When it comes to the day-to-day activities of citizens, how does all this reflect on the ordinary citizen in Sierra Leone?
If I come here and tell you that things are rosy and perfect for the citizens of this country, I will be misleading you. And as I've said multiple times, I will never do that. We live in tough times. The world is on fire in many, many places. The Ukraine crisis continues. We live in uncertain times. The elections of a new president in the United States has thrown new spanners. It's challenged global alliances and structures and things that people considered taboo and are now kind of all up in the air. So that has led to a new period of uncertainty that we're also contending with. The Israel-Palestine conflict continues to rage. Prices are high, inflation is high, but in the context of inflation, for example, we're as high as in the 50s. Today, the fact of the matter is that inflation is now closer to 10% because we have consistently reduced that. Does that mean that it's led to a transformation in all the prices and people are feeling that all the time? Not necessarily, but we've seen, for example, the introduction of the rice formula, which has led to a decrease in the prices of rice. That's the fact, that's the reality. People can attest to that. We've seen massive investment, for example, in local food production, and that is also leading to more production of rice, more availability for folks. We were suffering, for example, not so long ago, onion was not to be found in the market. We are not suffering from scarcity in Sierra Leone today, especially when it comes to essential commodities. Fuel was a massive problem for so long in this country. We're worried fuel increase. What we've seen consistently in the past few months is that sometimes you actually see a decrease in the price of fuel. Does that mean everything is rosy? Absolutely not. President Bill doesn't sleep much at night. He works really hard. The rest of his team, he holds us to the highest possible standard because his vision is for the true transformation of his country. But he's also a realist. He understands that that transformation from the debris that we were, from the abyss that he met this place, and that I think we all are aware of, it's not going to happen in the next 3 years, 7 years. He understands the continuum, and that's what he was saying. The way a true leader will inspire the next generation. It will inspire us all to dream and get to a place we didn't think it was possible.
And let's also talk about Sierra Leone being in the spotlight quite recently for first off, the allegation on the drug, the cocaine, 7 suitcases, the ambassador, the Sierra Leonean ambassador to Guinea. What's the update on that?
I think we mentioned at the press conference last week, the ambassador in Guinea has been recalled and is now, I can confirm, Ambassador Alban Bangwa is back in Sierra Leone. And the reason for his recall was so that he can answer questions as to what happened, how it happened. And now an executive review is happening as part of the investigations. We also signed an MOU with Guinea that we will continue to work closely on the investigation so that we can address cross-border crime, transnational crimes. That's something that we're committed to. We sent no less a person than our foreign minister, the Honorable Timothy Musakaba, to Guinea, met with his counterparts, and we've resolved a big part of that issue, and we've set in place what is going to happen. I think you should wait to see the outcome of the investigations with the ambassador. But as I said the last time, bad things will happen. People will seek to do bad things. The question is what you do, how you respond. On the question of the other issue, dealing with the Dutch government, I think we've been clear. They have sent what amounts to, I can confirm now, it's an extradition request for an individual that they refer to as just learders, who they believe is in Sierra Leone. We have been very consistent as a government that we will A, follow the law, B, we set up an investigation. It was an open source investigation. We've come back to the public and said in our investigation the identity of the individual that was in that picture, what we have on our records is a guy named Omar Sharif. And so one big part of the conversation was to identify, to make sure that indeed this is the same person that we're talking about. That's one. And two,
is it the same person?
This is now part of the investigation. I don't have an update on that particular fact. What the IG mentioned was that they have not yet been able to interrogate this individual, and that as known addresses for this individual that they went to, they were not able to locate the person. But they have also called on the public. If you have information, this is a small country, if you have information...
Does it mean he's nowhere to be found?
So if people have information, they can bring that to the police and the police will act on that. But as to the fact of the extradition request from the government of Sierra Leone, to the government of Sierra Leone from the Dutch government of the Netherlands, the government will follow the law. You are a lawyer yourself. We have laws here on extradition. They dates back, I think it's the 1974 Act, I think. Has very specific provisions on what needs to happen. The AG is reviewing that. As I've said, the AG is a man of integrity. He's a man of international repute. He's going to follow the law. He's going to review that. He's going to act in accordance with what is in the best interest of our country and what is consistent with the laws of our country. What seemed to have happened in this case with the Netherlands government, and we've been very vocal about that, is they chose to do all this first on social media and on the media before engaging with us, because they know that just like, we will be, even if the allegations are so huge, you cannot just write to another government or go to the media and say somebody's in another country and then we wake up one morning and arrest everybody that looks like that person. We will follow the steps and the law. And what we invited them to do from day one was, in our first press release, we invited them to come to us. It took them over 2 weeks before they even contacted us officially. And even when they did, they told us they're coming for one meeting, they did not, and then they called the ambassadors in two capitals and said, oh, can we come see you? And they rushed there, they did it without informing. Our AG was sitting there waiting for them. Their conduct here has not been consistent with what we expect of...
Are you aggrieved with regards to that?
We're not aggrieved, we're just disappointed in the antics. It seems like they were playing mostly to try to, play to the media. It feels like they're feeding a certain audience. We want to continue to treat them with respect, as we've done with them in the past, and we want to continue to follow the law and follow diplomatic protocol.
Let's say yours happens to be Omar Sharif, and it happens that he's in Sierra Leone. What will be the next line of action of the Sierra Leone government?
We'll follow the law. The extradition law is clear. If indeed there's been an extradition request, first it has to meet a threshold. The threshold is simple. There should be criminality that's established both in the country that is requesting, and what they are alleging has to also constitute crime in Sierra Leone. That's the first step. But that's a determination that the AG will make. He will review. So first they have a duty to submit the totality of the evidence that they used to convict this man to us. We will examine that evidence. And if the AG determines that this meets a threshold, and that he says, okay, indeed, there is reasonable grounds here. We've seen by our own analysis of the evidence, so they have to be willing to submit that evidence. That's the law. We didn't make the law. We have to implement the law. Then the AG will make an application to the courts for this extradition. The courts will now, the IG will now be tasked to produce this person, or apparently I've also heard that the courts can actually hold that hearing. Now, this individual also has a right. That's why you go to court. They can contest the extradition. They'll have a right to cancel. You know, the lawyers here will have a job to do. The courts will now examine both the position of the governments, and that position is going to be informed by what the Dutch government has provided us. And we say, look, we've come to the conclusion that there's reasonable grounds here. The person's lawyer will have a determination. The same reason they'll have a determination based on certain principles. Say, look, they'll argue, I will not be given a fair trial, blah, 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 blah. I have ties here, I should not be moved. Because in this case, we don't have an extradition agreement with the country in question. But it doesn't stop us from exploring that based on mutual aid agreements, principles and international law, which is what we will follow. So there's no obligation here. Now, let me finish. Following that, if the court now concludes that indeed the grounds have been met, the court will issue a ruling. The ruling will be that this person should indeed be extradited. Now, even after that, then the states will have a duty now to examine the circumstances. The AG reserves the right on the principles of, again, I'm not telling you what we will do or not do, I'm just breaking down what the law is. Based on public safety, national interest, the AG can say, okay, the court has said this, but in the interest of Sierra Leone, we are going to do X, Y, and Z, or we are going to now engage this country. But first, the AG has to meet that threshold. The AG has to go to courts. The person will have a right to defense. The courts will make a ruling. After the ruling, the states will now look at the circumstances and now start the process of making this move. So it's important that the public knows, so they don't fall for the sensational things that have been reported in the media.
Say his name is Omar Sharif, has already informed the public by even the ministry during the last press conference. Does that presupposes that the Omar Sharif in question is a Sierra Leone national?
I cannot speak to what their nationality is. The police has not mentioned this position yet. As I like to do my job, I like to stick to the facts. I like to report what I know authoritatively. And what I know on this issue is what the police tells me. The police started an investigation. They have come forward. Okay, we'll have another press conference next week. Before that press conference, I will have an opportunity to be thoroughly briefed by the Inspector General of Police, by the AG, and then I'll come back and say, based on their investigation, what they said at the time is that the identity that this person seems to be carrying, based on all the image and all the details that they have collected, that the person was carrying the name Omar Sharif. That's their conclusion. That it might be an alias, but that's the name. Okay? Now, that name is what the police has put forward, and that's what I know. They didn't come to say what their nationality is. In fact, they went further. They said they looked from, because the report at the time was that 6 months was the suspicion was that the individual had been in Sierra Leone for 6 months. So the police started looking all the records going back to 6 months.
There are even other allegations that says he has been in Sierra Leone for the past 2 years.
That's a new one now. That's a new allegation. But I'm saying at the time of the press conference last week, it was a 6 month that was being reported. So the police looked back all the way 6 months in all our official, formal crossing points into the country, and they said they did not have any evidence of the person coming through any of those.
Now, let's say the image of Sierra Leone has been dented in all of this as we speak. Let's say it turns out to be false. Will Sierra Leone take up a legal action against the Netherlands for having blackmailed the country to that extent?
I will say that there's probably been some attempts to undermine our public image in the way that it's been sensationally reported. But I don't think I'll go as far as agree that our image has been dented. I think image is not based on one or singular news. I think it's based on a set of different things that you have done.
But then it takes just one bad news to actually dent someone's
Well, I
image.
think it takes one bad news to create a bad impression of our country, but I don't think our image is dented. I think yes, we're going through a period of bad news on this particular issue, and every time your name is mentioned alongside kind of illicit transnational trade is not exactly a good thing. But as I've said, I've been in this business of public relations and comms for long enough to understand that what will outlast the sensational news are the facts. And in this case, we will follow the facts.
The reason for
and the actions that we take as a government. You saw with the Guinea situation, when we took those actions, they were fully reported. And the world will see that, this is a responsible country. This is a country that they have their acts together, they have laws in place, and they're following those laws. Same thing. There's no, we're just sticking to what we can, making sure that we're transparent, we're explaining to our public primarily, first of all, but also to international media. I've done multiple media interviews, and what I keep doing and saying to them is we're sticking to the facts, and that's what we're
The reason for that question is just drawing a cue from what my co-host just mentioned, that it takes just one case to, of course, generalize and say things are bad. Take, for instance, the incidents came up just after what happened in Guinea. And so now when you go to the internet to type, even for those who are traveling, you'll have to go through excessive checks because you're coming from Sierra Leone.
I don't agree that is already the conclusion, because if you look at the news, for example, if you type cocaine and take any country in the world, take the US, they have way more drug problems than we do. Their image is not dented for that. If you take the UK, I mean, the whole point of this is allegedly a transnational trade. Where does it end? Why is the Netherlands not dented? If by the whole news, this individual actually comes from the Netherlands, that's what they're saying. They escaped from their country. So they produce the person. That's where everything happens. The sale happens in their country, but we were dented. Why? Because we will name nine easy for them. No, I disagree with that. I think if you break it down, people are reasonable. When you break it down, again, nobody's alleging that Sierra Leone has become this big drug, but no. The whole point is that where is the drug going to? Where is the drug being sold? It's not in Sierra Leone. So again, we don't want to be part of it. We don't want our country to become a transit. I'm just speaking to the point of the notion that because there's one reporting of one incident here and there, that means your image is completely dented. The drug trade has been a long trade, it's been going on for a long time. The rich countries actually, again, you can Google any rich country, Norway, Finland, anyone, the Netherlands, they have way more on this news than we will ever have.
When we talk about drugs and Sierra Leone, I would also want to even bring the Kushdemic, as it was called. So if we talk about drugs, it's not the first time we're being infiltrated by drugs. And quite alarming was just what we're coming from. So do you still want to say that this doesn't pose or paint Sierra Leone in a bad light?
It paints us in a bad light, and it does pose a threat to our image if we don't respond to it. That's what I mean. I'm saying that the report of an incident does not damage you. It's what you fail to do. So you mentioned the Kush pandemic. We were the first country that declared it a national emergency. Our president set up a task force, appointed his chief minister to lead on that task force. We did national town halls that I led. We brought everybody together. We had raids happening. We set up specialized police units. Again, Kush was a bad news. The images were so rough. Those do not define you. What defines you ultimately is how you respond. And on the Kush crisis, our response has been really applauded. This is a country that took decisive action, and by any and all accounts, many people did not believe that today will be where we are on the Kush crisis. People thought that
the drug is still
in the community.
Kush drugs have been a problem from the beginning of human beings. People, look, not so long ago, we talked about Pampas. People are finding all kinds of things. They take pains, right? But nobody can tell you that the Kush crisis today is where it was 1 year ago. We are resolute that we will disrupt the chain, we'll engage our communities, we'll make sure anybody found culpable will be arrested, but also that we will not criminalize our young people. Just because you take Kush, we will throw you into. We have invested in rehabilitation centers. We have gotten a lot of young people come out of those rehabilitation centers. And I think the public now knows that Kush is a dangerous substance, and anybody that's found, people are arresting in communities.
Back to yours.
At the peak of it. So our response is what defines us. It's not the fact that something bad is going to happen.
Back to the yours of Umar Sharif Sagar. Now, you mentioned national security earlier on as well. Why did it have to take the international media to report a high-profile person like yours? A man that was on the second seat in one of the church services behind the president, and other videos surfacing online, even though we haven't, or investigations haven't stated if it's the same person. But now this same person's personality is highly questioned. Another video popping up on social media being at the farm with the first gentleman as well. Why did it have to take international media reports to even, question a personality like that?
So
without having our internal security even addressing or raising such concerns?
There are two things about your question. One, you're making a lot of leaps. You're referring to videos that have not been verified. That's whether this individual is in that video.
And I guess I made that clarification.
Exactly. So I don't know that for sure. And so again, in this role, I stick to what I know, what the facts are. Okay? In our first release, we were very clear. The president will attend multiple events. Sometimes there are people there. Members of his family will invite people that they know, or people, and they attend. It's a church. You go to church, right? Do you ever see that we check whether they can at church today? We don't. This is the one thing we don't do in Sierra Leone.
When the president visits
the mood exactly. I've been to many
sitting positions when there is a high profile person.
I have been to many church. I'm a proud Muslim, but as you know, in Sierra Leone, we come from different. My mom is Christian, so I've been to churches multiple times. Okay. Look, the notion that in Sierra Leone, because president is coming to service, we should know everybody, their background, stead and bond them.
You wouldn't know all that, but the seats that are being reserved. You have distinguished guests. There are always seats reserved in churches or conferences or places for dignitaries.
I try not to get into the gotcha kind of game. What I wanted to make clear is that sitting position is not an indication of association with the president, especially at a church service during the festive period. It is possible that somebody knows somebody who invited somebody. That's true. That's the point I'm making. And again, they were not sitting on the same row with the president, they were sitting behind the president. What I know when I've been to these places with His Excellency, when he comes in, he walks right up to his reserved seat and he sits, and he's a military man, he's very disciplined. He just stays focused, right? Now, there will be, people will kind of make things up as, what this means, what does not mean. I don't want to focus on those things. I want to focus on what the substance of this conversation is.
Okay.
And it is not, you're asking why did it take international media to report? As at the time of the news, let me make something clear. As at the time of the news, this person's name was not on Interpol as a wanted person at all. We have made that very clear. Where our police and international, our law enforcement, where they get information on who is a wanted criminal or not? It's on Interpol. The Dutch government had not put that information there. Okay, that's number one. Two, we, as I've said clearly, Sierra Leone is not a law enforcement agency for the Netherlands. We don't follow everybody that they have convicted in the Netherlands and we start looking for them in Sierra Leone. That would be an impossible task for the government of Sierra Leone. So, at no point had they informed us that, we think somebody is a criminal that is in your country. At no point had they informed us of this, okay? and that this is somebody that we're looking for. Even by their own admission publicly, they have said they said they have known for months. But in diplomacy, when you know those kinds of things, you should contact us. We say publicly again, at no point had anybody contacted us, okay? So, you have to think about the states. You and I are the states. The IG, the police officer, they are human beings too. They go to Interpol, they look background check, they see this, but it's not like when somebody walks into this building, I look at them, immediately all the crimes that they have committed is going to show up on my screen. No, it doesn't. if you're not listed anywhere, okay? So I'm saying there's a principle of reasonability that we have to apply to this conversation. It does not mean that we should not review certain steps and say, oh, what happened, what did not happen, especially if we find out, for example, that this person is the same person, which is a determination that, again, from where I sit, they have not told me that they have made that determination. So all I'm saying is we can take certain steps. We will learn from every decision, every step, everything that's happened in this case, the reporting, the relationships, we'll learn from that. We announced that an investigation will be conducted, and that investigation will be comprehensive to look at all of these kinds of things. But what we are clear about is that at no point did somebody say, look, that person, oh, the reason he went to international media is because the Dutch government started talking. So when they talk and say, oh, we know this person, we have found them guilty, we'll be looking for them, and then they reported it, then we know. But before then, we did not know.
Then, Minister Siba, I think, just as Lizzie mentioned, these allegations that we've had over time, yet to be ascertained, are ones that had come very close to the corridors of the first family. And even fingers were pointed at the daughter of the president. Has she been called for investigations on, say, to help the police with A, B, C, D?
I've answered this question before, and I'm going to answer it the very last time, okay? The president's family have a right to privacy, and they have the same rights to the presumption of innocence that you have a right to. I don't come on air and somebody asks me who you are dating, who you were with. That's not the business of the state. It's not the business of the state. I do not comment on personal relationships of the president's family members who are not being accused of any crime. If the police makes a determination on any other thing, the police will report that. But I don't like when people, because I don't want to run a gossip column.
With the exception,
in this position that I am.
I know the president is immune from whatsoever the case might be. It forgives him that privilege. But again, is it just so that things have been cleared up? Is it wrong to bring her in to help out with
and what's the basis for bringing her in? Like, I don't just wake up tomorrow morning and say, let's bring somebody's mom, somebody's child. What's the basis? Do you have any legal basis? Do you have any facts to say this person is suspected of illegality and criminality? And by the way, we are not a law enforcement agency for the Netherlands. It's very important that people understand that. They have made an extradition request. And that's what we will follow our laws for. The first thing the police were saying is to establish if this person is considered a criminal in Sierra Leone. If somebody not commits crime in a salon, we know the pass for look at they will arrest them or begin all and begin say, oh, we don't hear say we be in a while that country you commit social crime. No, that's not how the law works. I know you're a law student. So I don't understand the basis for the question. Why should we be hauling people's family members in to assist with what investigation? What are we investigating the person for?
You know, just after pictures or at the day of the church service circulated on social media, well, we actually have you here as well to clarify some of the information that's out there, whether it's false or true. And so just after that, we've also seen accounts wherein, you know, the First Lady was actually distanced from her daughter, which apparently from
I really want to advise you that when it comes to people's families and what happened. Wait, let me finish.
Public,
when it comes
officials.
to, yeah, but I will not be coming here to respond.
Well, you could still not respond to it, but I just want to lay my question and then you decide whether you want to answer or not.
I want to advise
we
that
just want to get the clarification.
The 5-10 minutes that we have left, let's don't spend it on conjecture.
Is there any other
family drama?
Is there any other supposed proximity to the other family members, wherein we've seen instances where the First Lady has been distanced from all of these happenings? Because the same person in question is the Omar Sharif and yours, which has not, investigations haven't really proved to be the same person. But could her distancing, which has been seen constantly online, could that also mean that other members of the First Family are actually involved?
Okay. I have not seen the First Lady comment on this at all. I have not seen that. And even if she did, question of, person in their family, that's none of my business. It's none of the business of the states. What happens within the family is none of my business.
Could this
I'm the
privacy
official
be accorded to any other
spokesperson for the
person?
government of Sierra Leone. And I understand that the First Lady, His Excellency, their family, they deserve a right to their privacy. What they choose to say on social media is entirely their prerogative. It's not my business. I don't speak about that. I will never speak about that, and I will not comment on things like that.
Could this
when it comes to government position and government issues, you ask me, I answer any and all questions.
Could this?
But I'm not going to say, First Lady, you don't respond. In fact, I know for sure, because I follow the First Lady's social media, she has never commented on this issue.
Could this same privacy be accorded to any other Sierra Leonean?
Absolutely. Have you ever seen me come here and talk about who is dating who? I will never be part of that. Absolutely, 100%. Every Sierra Leonean is entitled by law to privacy. I don't talk about all your escapades, if you have some.
Was the church service a private affair or a private event? The church service, was it private?
A church service, by definition, is not. It's a church service. But the president was attending the church service. That's all we said. And again, we're not saying that people were not at the church service. That's why we said the investigation was doing, and that's the product of that. But the question of whether who was there and who was not there, and that we ought to have known everybody in the church service and all their background, whether they're born there, whether they're mama there, whether they're papa there, they don't do all their lives. I was just pointing out that that's an unreasonable standard for a church service.
We'll go for sports. And when we come back, we'll see.
And then I will have left because it's 10. I do have a 10 o'clock meeting. So,
but please, Mr. Minister. Please.
No, it's 9:57.
I know.
You know that as a minister, one of the things I'm known for and I'm very proud of is time. I have another meeting that's supposed to start at 10. I've told them I'll be 10:15.
We'll allow you to
so
go.
I need to run to make it.
We'll definitely allow you to go. But quickly, as we wrap up, we're expected to have a lawyer on Zoom, Sam,
he's my comrade and my fellow colleague.
Sam to talk on, of course, extradition law. At some point in time, I've heard you during one of the press conferences where you said you did mention that when it comes to us requesting for say Adebayo, they never made available the gentleman, and now they're asking us through an informal means. Now they've gone through the formal means. Is it a matter of exchange?
No.
If Adebayo is made available,
No.
and then so yours, Omar Sharif will be made available.
No, it's not a matter of exchange. And I think sometimes these videos we cut then misrepresent what I was saying. I was giving an example of how business is supposed to be conducted between two countries. When you have an issue between two countries, that's the way. And I was saying that our country, just by sheer coincidence, has had an issue with an individual in the very country that's now subjecting us to this sensationalized public conversation without reaching out to us directly. I was just explaining. And in this case, I said, we sent the AG and the foreign minister the first time. The second time, we sent the AG. Met with them, handed over files, engaged them, because at the time we considered Adebayo one of the most wanted individuals in Sierra Leone. He was involved in planning inciting, and the execution of activities that led to the death of multiple Sierra Leoneans, including law enforcement officials, police officers who left their homes. And we believe that he was also involved in planning activities that were meant to subvert the state. What we did was to follow diplomatic protocol in our relationship with this very same country. We went to them, we handed over the files, and it's taken years upon years. Up till now, I will say the process is still ongoing. I was just making clear that there is a way you conduct yourself. And I was saying to people that you have not even heard of this before, because we did not start with going to the media and saying, the Netherlands have a criminal in there. We did not start that process. That's not how you do it. And I'm very comfortable to say that they have not conducted themselves in the way that is expected of a diplomatic relationship or of a country that you have to have respect for. Simple. And we have done that in that case. I was not saying that, oh, we need to make an exchange. No. I was just explaining that just by sheer providence, we're talking here of the same country, and they have an example of how we treated them and their lack of action. And so to go to media and expect that the next day that we will round up people in Sierra Leone and put them in a plane, I was just preparing the public that this is not how it's done.
All right.
Thank you so very much. Sharon Oba, who is the Minister of Information and Civic Education. I think I got it right this time round.
Yes. Thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure having you in our studios. Now